Welcome to Adventures in Education. Adventures in Education is a program that spotlights positive things happening in the world of education in Southern Oregon and Northern California. I'm John Letts. Today we spotlight a very important part of the education of the children in our part of the state. And I'll explain in a moment where that fits in and why that's so critically important. But right now I want to introduce my guest. This is Summer Brandon. Summer, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Summer is the education director for ScienceWorks Hands-On Museum here in Ashland. And Summer, I wanted to kind of set the stage here with a bit of a personal story from my background in teaching in schools. I'm telling the honest truth here. I have heard 3 principals in my tenure as a teacher. I've heard 3 principals tell their staff, don't worry if you don't get around to teaching science. Now, if you weren't in the educational world, that might really shock you. But I'm not making it up, and I'm not going to name the principals because I think it was pretty widespread.
Yeah,
when reading first came in, along with No Child Left Behind, they structured things in a way that did not really leave time for teaching science. And what was even worse is they would say, or the reading series comes with these little books, and some of them are about science. So when you teach reading for information, just put that down as your science curriculum. And I see a look of horror on your face, and for a good reason. So ScienceWorks is not just existing because it's a nice thing to do.
That's right. It's
a critical part of being able for our children to get a science education, the children that live here in Southern Oregon.
Absolutely. It's a chance to enrich what classroom teachers are able to do, and they're working hard to get great learning into their classrooms. But it can be difficult to work it into a schedule, and it can be difficult to make it really enriching when you're lacking supplies or a place to store materials or the time it takes to do some really rich inquiry. So we can come alongside the work that's happening in schools to help make that a little bit easier to do. And
we hear at various times about reform efforts.
Sure.
And every time they come up, it's always something new. They never hit to me on the critical things. One critical thing is the teaching staff has to be able to control the school. You know, the behavior is what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And we won't go any further into that, but the other critical thing is teachers are not given enough time to prepare quality lessons. And even teachers are not aware of that. So that's kind of my soapbox.
Yeah.
And when we compare our system with systems that have better outcomes as measured by ways that we all agree are valid, those systems have more preparation time for the teachers.
It takes time to build really engaging, really rich experiences for students, and it takes time to implement them in the classroom. It can be challenging to do.
So thank heavens you guys are here.
Sure.
So another producer, Alex McGlass, and I came down to ScienceWorks with our cameras, and we got some really good footage of some of the things that's been there for quite some time, and really quality kinds of things. And I understand that there's a recent capitalization program for expanding ScienceWorks. How is that going?
So we completed our capital campaign a little more than a year ago, and we're able to purchase our building, which is fantastic because what that lets us do is really be strategic about the way we use our space to bring the best experience we can. So we were able to do some of the upkeep and the renovation that needed to be done just to keep it a great building. But we also are able right now, we're turning what's left of our storage space on the floor into a second classroom, which is going to let us bring more students, more teachers, and more camps during the summer to ScienceWorks to do some great hands-on learning.
And speaking about numbers of visitors, what is the number of visitors that this museum has seen in the last year, more or less?
So typically we're around 70,000 visitors.
You said 70,000?
70,000.
Okay.
And last year we served, through our school programs, a little over 15,000 students.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what a huge blessing to have for,
Yeah.
for these students in the area. Well, we saw some really cool things in there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to point out, along with the bubble room, which I think is
Which
just
is a favorite.
fantastic.
Everyone loves the bubble room.
Oh,
That's
bubble
right.
room's great.
That's right.
So we spent some time in the bubble room. Along with that, the thing that just kind of shifted my thinking a little bit in terms of really relating to the excitement that science can bring. Very simple thing. There was a cylinder that had stripes on it.
Oh, sure.
And it was hollow, so you could see on the inside, which also had stripes on it. And you spin it around. It's very hands-on. You make everything move in this museum. So the cylinder's spinning around, and the sign says to close one eye and see how it looks differently. Well, that was no big aha moment for me, because binocular vision, monocular vision. But then take your finger and press on the closed eyelid and see what happens. And all I can say is it changes everything that you're seeing. And I'm like, what happened there? Did I press on my optic nerve? Did something in the brain process differently? That, to me, is the essence of science inquiry, when you start with those kinds of questions.
Sure.
And the museum is full of things that can affect kids that way.
Yeah, it's built to be a curiosity-driven experience. So when you go in, there are things that are going to engage you. They'll grab your attention, a rocket that goes up, or things that make sound. But once you engage with them, the real beauty, the real value in terms of great learning and building great leaders in our community is that it gives people a chance to practice asking what-if questions. What would happen if? And then do something about it. Try it, so that you're leading your own experience, which is really an important practice to build. If you're going to go on and be a successful student or be a business leader, you need to be able to be that self-manager, and this is a chance to help follow your own lead.
I noticed that the museum is set up for people of all ages.
Absolutely.
I mean, look how impressed I was, and I just turned 60. Okay, so I can represent the senior menu crowd. Okay,
sure.
But you know, I also noticed you have Discovery Island.
Yep.
Getting the kids excited at a very young age, and we got some great footage of some kids interacting with those exhibits.
Absolutely. It is for kids of a young age, but I'll tell you, it's as much for the family. You know, when you're working with young children, and this is something we learned from our partnership with Southern Oregon Head Start, which has been a fantastic partner for us, that if you want to have an impact that's lasting and starts at an early age, you really need to involve the whole family. So when you go in Discovery Island, you don't just see a bunch of 2-year-olds wandering around on their own. You see families engaging, asking questions, prompting, following the child's lead. They have this whole experience. It becomes part of the family culture to explore and wonder together. And that builds experiences at home and as a practice for a family for years to come. So we're really happy to be part of fostering that for families when they come in together. And a lot of times the people in that room come in many times during the week.
Well, I tell you, I saw the sign that said this room is for 5 and under, and I went, oh man, I wish I was 5 again.
The pirate ship is cool. I know.
And one of the families that was there, their little girl was so involved with everything that they were going, how are we going to get her out of here?
Oh, absolutely. We have satisfied customers, you know, digging their heels to not leave. That's how we know we've had a great day. Nobody wants to go home.
So you have that family involvement.
That's right.
And then and you have this early age of getting excited about science.
That's right.
And you know, I'm a language teacher for the most part, so I fully respect language. But there is nothing like that hands-on experience and what I call the mind-on experience of, I wonder why it did that. I wonder how this works. And like you said, extrapolating, well, if you change this, I wonder what would happen. So we're going to see a video clip very shortly, and the video clip will show some of the interaction with some of the visitors to this museum, with some of the hands-on exhibits that you have. I almost hesitate to say exhibits because you kind of think of behind glass somewhere.
Right, that's
this
right.
is not the way ScienceWorks is
right.
set up, as you'll see in this video clip. So we'll return right after this.
Welcome to ScienceWorks, where science is fun.
Well, it is fun, but don't take my word for it. Let's see a bit of what you can enjoy when you visit this hands-on museum. I was fortunate to visit during the summer when kids were here for camp. Along with the more structured activities, campers got to interact with the museum's many hands-on exhibits. A whole section was devoted to flight, including space flight. Kids got to design and build paper airplanes and to fly them with the help of this invention. Nothing passive about this activity. Really tiny things are the stars of this exhibit of the nano world. The invisible becomes visible here with the help of models like this one. A very popular room is the one dedicated to the study of bubbles, bubbleology. For those who want to go beyond the fun of making bubbles, there's information that explains the science in simple language. Here's one of the permanent exhibits where you can explore optical illusions. There's no illusion here, where the pressure of air and water combine to make a big splash. This optical illusion left me full of questions. Closing one eye made a difference in what I saw, but then putting my finger on the closed eyelid really made it look very different.
That would be easier.
Different configurations of pulleys demonstrated the power of simple machines here. This gravity well demonstrates a vortex and some mesmerizing motion. The earthquake machine, and many more permanent exhibits. As the lyrics in the Creedence Clearwater Revival song say, you can ponder perpetual motion, or at least the perpetual motion machine. Visitors here can learn about our planet and how different things affect it. A great part of this fantastic museum is Discovery Island. It's hands-on like the rest, but this is for really young visitors. So there's one thing you can count on.
There's always something new to discover at ScienceWorks.
Welcome back to Adventures in Education, an educational program, or basically a program about education. We focus on positive things that are happening in the world of education in Southern Oregon and Northern California. Today our guest is Summer Brandon. She is from ScienceWorks. If you've been to ScienceWorks in Ashland, I don't have to say anything more about it because you had a great time there, okay? But if you don't know about it or you haven't been there yet, it's an asset in our community. Maybe you haven't been, but your child has been, and if they were, they probably came back and could not shut up about it for a couple of hours. It's a very exciting experience. And Summer, one thing that you know, when I ask kids when they come back from the museum, I say, well, how was it, you know? It's very common for a kid to say, oh, that was cool. Well, yeah, it was, but what did you learn? And you know, if you don't question enough, if you don't dig deep enough, it's like, oh, I learned that if I turn this knob, this thing blows up. Well, I go, well, which knob? What kind of thing? And if you talk them through it, they do have that knowledge because they have had the hands-on.
Oh, sure. And they have that knowledge largely because they figured it out. So there are some signs that help people get into the exhibit or into the activity, but we're really proud of the fact that we set up experiences where a person can create something new for themselves. They can be curious, they can ask a question, they can try something and learn something for themselves, which always makes it cooler and easier to remember because you went through the process to get to that answer.
Yeah, it certainly does. There's this research that says you remember about 5% of what you read and on about what you hear, but the thing that you actually manipulate and stuff, and the only thing that's a higher level than that is when you teach it.
Right.
And that kind of brings us to, you guys serve a lot of schools.
Absolutely.
So what kind of things do you do for the schools when they come?
We have a couple main opportunities. One is to just visit the museum with your classroom and explore the exhibits, which a lot of classes do. We have a field trip that provides some exploration of exhibits as well as a hands-on lab with one of our scientists and a demonstration show called Science Live, where we do things that you couldn't or shouldn't do at home.
Like the thing with the hydrogen that I saw one time?
A hydrogen balloon.
You don't want that blowing up in your house.
That's right. Some liquid nitrogen, all sorts of things that should not happen at your house. So we do field trips, but we also go out to schools. We live in a rural region where it can be really challenging to get kids on a bus and drive all the way to ScienceWorks. So we take some of those labs or longer programs called Inquiry out to schools. We'll spend anywhere from one class period to four days with a class, teaching some inquiry skills and bringing some great explorations out to students.
Now, I understand you do some training with teachers as well?
We do. In fact, we just did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and often it's, we know that elementary teachers aren't always as equipped as they want to be for science. Either they didn't learn a lot of science content in their schooling, so they don't feel comfortable with the content, or they aren't sure how to facilitate learning in a way that really gets to the science practices. So we provide some training in both of those areas.
And science inquiry is that's the state's direction, isn't it, to have that inquiry?
I mean, it's really the way that we learn. It's absolutely in school standards, so which is great because it encourages it to be in schools, but you do it every morning. When you decide what to wear and what to eat in the morning and how to get to the place you want to go, you ask a question and do something to figure out the answer. So it's really the human process for learning. We're really just coming back to the place where we're making that a part of what we teach kids how to do, which is fantastic because when we think about all the things that humans know and have learned how to do, for the most part, we know how to do those things because of inquiry.
Yes.
So we're equipping kids to be our next round of leaders and inventors and discoverers.
And I know, relating to my background in language, people don't learn how to speak in general from a series of instruction. They notice patterns, and they notice if I follow this pattern, I get what I need.
Sure.
If I follow this pattern, I get a frown.
Everyone
so
looks
I'm
at
not
me.
going to do that one again. You know.
That's right.
And so much more so with science. You know, it's great.
Absolutely. That really, I think, is at the heart of science, are those process skills. It's great to know lots of information, but in an information age, we can look that up often. If you are equipped to ask questions and figure out how to come up with an answer, how to work past a challenge, or how to overcome something that doesn't work the way you expected, those are skills that really open doors.
And you know, we're living in a world where it's becoming critical to understand science.
Absolutely.
Both the
Yes.
science that other people do and to engage in science.
Absolutely.
Now, we've heard a lot about things that are going on with the climate of our planet. And whenever I address science, which I do in language class as well, because science kind of has its own language, you know,
Sure.
it's its own jargon. And the thing I always want to tell students is science has nothing to do with belief. The whole scientific method is not related to belief at all.
It's about evidence.
It's evidence, exactly. You did this thing, you had this theory, you had this thought, you had this idea, and you tested it out, and you documented what you tested so that anyone else can do the same test.
That's right.
So it's not just, oh, take his word for it because he's a tall guy, you know, or take her word for it because she wears thick glasses. It's none of that.
That's right.
It's, okay, if you're skeptical, you hear some science, I'm skeptical. Well, read how they came across that, or listen to people talk about how they came across you know, the results of what they're doing. And then you can think of, well, I wonder if they considered this. You know, so you can get involved in the thinking process too.
I would say you should be skeptical. That's part of having that science mind, so that if something doesn't seem to make sense, you don't just accept it at face value. You ask questions. You look for evidence. You look at the evidence and say, does that make sense? Does that seem consistent? Does it seem reliable? Does it seem like somebody maybe made that up? Which happens.
Yeah.
So we want critical thinkers.
And so along those lines, I know ScienceWorks does a number of outreaches to our community. Can you tell me about some of those?
So we're out in a lot of places, which is fantastic. We're part of the Green Show, which we'll always have a great time with. So part of what we do in outreach is to spark enthusiasm. We know that if people find something fun, they're going to keep looking for it. They're going to seek it. But we also want to provide people opportunities to be part of the science. So we host things like Rogue Valley Mini Maker Fair is going to be at ScienceWorks this year on November 19th. So it's a chance for our regional inventors to come and show what they know and what they've been able to build, and for people to come and actually meet those makers, meet those inventors, and get connected. Maybe try a tool that's new to them, try an idea that's new to them, see themselves as a maker. That's really our mission. We really want to build the capacity for curiosity-based learning, for people to be inventive, creatively confident in their own world. So as much as we like seeing them at ScienceWorks, we want them to know they don't have to come to us. They could do this kind of learning in their backyard with their family, with their friends. We could build sort of a movement of a science culture, which would be amazing.
And you have on display some of the things that people have put together in terms of
yeah.
inventions. And then I saw or read a report, I guess, in the newspaper where some of your own staff invented a piece of equipment that they lease out to other museums as part of the funding. Formula.
We have lots of great things that we're able to contribute to our museum and science community, which is part of what we want to do. We don't just want to talk about being scientists and being makers. We as staff and as an institution, we want to be part of that movement. So we want to have some credibility, but also just it's a lot of fun. We want to be in on the fun too.
Sure, sure. So let's talk about funding. Now, everyone knows we're in a recession.
Yep.
And everyone knows that this recession has been brutal, you know, in the length of it and the depth of it. And the thing about that, the same way that individuals are impacted in their retirement funds and everything else, a lot of the grant money is tied up in endowments, which generally you keep the principal there and you grant out the growth of it, the interest. So how has that impacted ScienceWorks?
We are really fortunate to have fantastic champions and partners in our community. So we've had to get a little creative about how we use the funding we get, but we continue to be supported by our community through patrons. We get a lot of our income from people coming in the door using ScienceWorks as a part of their science culture. But we also have grants that come in, support that comes from the City of Ashland, from Oregon Community Foundation, from regional and local folks. So it's always a struggle, what we're able to do. We know that for the most part, our biggest client, the schools, aren't able to pay what it costs to come to a field trip. And so we offer it at what schools can do, and we trust our community to help fund the rest. And for the most part, our region, the Rogue Valley region, the counties surrounding us and beyond have come through for kids and families in this area year after year. So we move forward with some bold vision, trusting that our community really values what this does for families and kids and for our community. These are rising leaders that we're developing. We know that it's critical that we have critical thinkers, problem solvers, creatively confident people. And I think even though it's a long game, we have funders who understand how that human development, how important it is and how long it can take, and how important it is to have it happen not just in school. Kids from kindergarten through 12th grade spend 90% of their waking hours outside of school. So we need to have an opportunity for families to engage in great experiences during that time if we expect to have a culture of critical thinkers and science and engineering and math and technology, which we know we need moving forward. That's the biggest growing sector in our culture.
Where can someone go to learn more?
You can go to scienceworksmuseum.org, or you can just come by and say hi and come experience it for yourself, become a member, become part of that support, and become part of the fun. It's not just for kids, you're right, it's for all ages.
Summer Brandon, thank you very much for being my guest today.
It's my pleasure.
On Adventures in Education. And we'll have more programs in the future, so stay tuned to RVTV. I want to thank my staff for putting this program together, and I want to thank you, our viewers. See you next time on Adventures in Education. I'm John Letts.